What I'm going to do is just quick introductions for our panelists who are, I'm really excited about this panel, excited about energy. This is a very knowledgeable panel and a very action-oriented panel, as you will hear. The energy field right now is in a complete paradigm shift, going from traditional fossil fuels to renewables, distributed generation. So it's really an exciting time. These are the folks who are leading that effort both on the gas, electric, and the renewable space. So I'll do just a quick introductions for the four of them. I'd ask questions to be handled at the end so that each of them have an opportunity to speak, and then we'll get going. So Tom Falcone is going to be the first speaker. He's LIPA's Chief Executive Officer. He's been Chief CEO since 2015. He's responsible for managing the third largest not-for-profit publicly owned electric utility in the country. Tom received his Bachelor of Science in Economics from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. We have Keith Rooney, who's the Director of Customer Government and Community Relations in downstate New York for National Grid. This includes managing a team of jurisdictional managers in Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens, and Long Island. He's a graduate of St. Joseph's College with a business degree and executive MBA, and he's a former United States Marine. So thank you for your service. Mike Foltz, who's the Director of Energy and Efficiency and Renewables for PSEG Long Island. Tom will explain the relationship between PSEG Long Island and Long Island Power Authority. And in his role, Mike's responsible for planning, implementing, and evaluating the energy efficiency and renewable programs. He's also one of the chief leads on PSEG and LIPA's Utility 2.0 plan that we present each year. Mike holds a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Rensselaer Polytech and a master's in business from Union College, and he's a licensed professional engineer. And then finally, Clint's going to be back batting cleanup. We have Clint Plummer, who's Vice President of Development for Deepwater Wind, where he manages the company's planning, origination, and development activities. Clint has been very much a leader in the offshore wind field in a number of states. We've gotten to know Clint very well and his team as we have the purchase power agreement for 130 megawatts off of the South Fork of Long Island. Clint has his master's degrees in engineering and public administration from MIT and New York University, as well as a bachelor's degree in business administration from the Ohio State University. And Clint will also kind of give you an update on the relationship between Ørsted and Deepwater Wind, which has been in the news lately. So that's the last you're going to hear from me, and I turn it over to Tom Falcone.
So the good news is if you find me dull or boring, because we are talking about utility business, it isn't that exciting, you can listen to the other presentation. Dance back and forth between the two. So I have a little bit of a PowerPoint. I thought I'd cover a few different things. So number one, just we're here to talk about Long Island. So Long Island Electric Grid, our relationship with PSEG, the things that we're focused on at LIPA and at PSEG, and a little bit about the digital grid as well. And then try and get off the stage quick enough that we can allow you all to ask questions. So then, just a brief overview of the grid. And when we talk about the grid, what does the grid mean? So the electric grid on Long Island, we're talking about 15,000 miles of transmission and distribution. That means poles and wires and cable. We're talking about interconnections to other parts of the country. We are an island, but we aren't an island. I mean, we're an island, but we are interconnected to a larger grid. Just to give you an idea, there's 1.1 million customers, about 3 million people that we serve, 32 power plant sites, a budget that runs around $3.6 billion a year. And if you're trying to power the grid, that's 21 million megawatt hours of electricity a year. You don't need to know what a megawatt hour is. It's like a really big kilowatt hour. You don't need to know what a kilowatt hour is. Just to give you a comparative size, 21 million megawatt hours. The rest of New York, we're interconnected to 142. So it's about 7 times the size. New England, 108 million megawatt hours. That's about 5 times the size. And the New Jersey, Maryland, Pennsylvania market, about 787 million megawatt hours, about 40 times the size. So that's the grid in 1 minute or less. you an idea of who all is involved, it's a very complex stew. You might get confused about who does what. Sometimes I'm confused. So LIPA owns the Long Island electric grid. We contract for power with various generators like National Grid, like Deepwater Wind, to try and serve our needs. We also buy power from regional markets. Those regional markets are the ones that I just outlined, buying power from the rest of New York State, from New England, from Pennsylvania. We're regulated, and so we have a state regulatory agency, DPS. Some of our generation is regulated by FERC, the federal government. We have NYSERDA, who runs some of the clean energy programs and provides us with advice. We have the New York Independent System Operator. They're the ones who run this energy market and actually dispatch the plants in an efficient way. And we have our relationship with PSEG Long Island. So LIPA owns the grid. For the last 20 years since we bought the grid from the Long Island Lighting Company, we've contracted with other parties to run it on a day-to-day basis. So LIPA's role is to own it. The advantage of that is we have a much lower cost of capital. We're eligible for tax-exempt financing. We're a government entity. We're eligible for federal grants. We've got about $1.5 billion of federal grants. All these things reduce the power bill. And then we contract with someone like PSEG Long Island or National Grid before us, another big, large partner, and we share certain costs. We share certain things like procurement. We have the scale and expertise that comes with that. It's a really nice combination. It's basically a public-private partnership. So a little bit on who all we are. So what are we focused on? So I said, what are we focused on LIPA? We're focused on what our objectives are, what we're trying to achieve. And our focus is really on customer value. And what I mean by customer value is that price is what you pay and value is what you get. And so what do you pay? Well, interestingly, here's the average residential customer's electric bill over the last 10 years. So in 2008, it was about $154 a month in Long Island. In 2013, it was $152. In 2018, it was $158. In 2019, it's going to be $155. Your bill's actually going to go down slightly for the coming year. What you can see is it's all pretty flat. Over a period of time when inflation has been about 2 to 3% a year, so most costs have gone up 20-so%, 20-25%. The bill's basically flat. One thing is that we went through Hurricane Sandy in 2013. We switched our partner. We moved to PSEG Long Island. We made a bunch of reforms. So that's 2013, and we basically adopted a new business strategy. And so here's 2013, price is what you pay, value is what you get, here's value what you get. One of the things we look at a lot is customer satisfaction. And so that measures everything. I mean, it's what value the customer perceives in all the ways the customers perceive value. And it's a very comprehensive measure. This is, we use J.D. Power, you can measure customer satisfaction in various ways, but here's LIPA. You don't need to read all the fine print. Here's LIPA in 2013. Here's the rest of the utilities for customer satisfaction. This actually wasn't just the lowest in our region. It's actually the lowest in the country. And it had been there forever. So LIPA had long been the lowest in the country. And occasionally, this particular survey started about 20 years ago. Occasionally, it's like if you, they call it the dead cat bounce. Hopefully, they don't offend anyone. It's not animal rights, but the old analogy is if you threw a dead cat off a balcony, they would still bounce. It's a little. But anyway, occasionally we bounced off the bottom, but we were pretty routinely at the bottom, and so there's reasons for that. And so the goal that we established was let's get first into the pack, and then get towards the top of the pack over time. But step one, you got to run before you walk. And so price is what you pay. Here's what customers were paying in 2013, $152. Here's what they're paying in 2019, $155. Basically the same, but people perceiving more value, and I don't think that's accidental. I mean, it was something that we pursued. It was a strategy. So if we go to the next page, you'll see what I mean. Which is that we have put a lot more money into the electric grid. We've basically tripled our investment in infrastructure. We've put money into new systems and new technologies. Because our customers perceive us like they perceive every other business interaction they have. Are they happy with Amazon or not? Are they happy with the local bakery store or not? Either you're investing to keep up or you're not. And we just weren't investing to keep up. But at the same time, there's things that customers really don't perceive much value at. So by cutting costs and things that customers didn't value that much, we were able to put the money into the things customers did value and hold the bill flat. So what do I mean by that? So we did a integrated resource plan, we went out and we had this investment strategy. We were going to put a lot of money into power plants, and the market was starting to change. And we looked at it again and we said, it doesn't make any sense. And by not doing that, we're saving customers $342 million next year. Went to the legislature and said, we've got a problem with property taxes on Long Island. LIPA, you know, it's something we may have been dead last in customer satisfaction, but something we were always number one in. We paid more property taxes than any other utility in the country. So we were number one. And so from that perspective, we went to the legislature and said, there's something broken about the assessment system. And they agreed, and they put in a cap on property taxes, and that's saving about $100 million this year. We went to the legislature and we said, you know, if you give us the ability to refinance a debt in a particular way, we could save a bunch of money. We're saving about $100 million this year. We renegotiated our power purchase agreements, our contracts with generators. That's saving about $20 million next year. So I'm not going to go down through the whole list, but my point is, here's $600 million of savings that we've identified from doing all these things, and I don't think customers miss any of these things. You know, I'm pretty sure that customers do not miss that we used to pay more for gas transportation, or that we had more independent system operator transmission costs, or any of these things. And yet, by cutting those costs, you're able to reinvest in something else. So, what are we investing in over the next few years? What are we focused on? If you flip the page, so one of them is you have smart meters. So you may not be aware, but you have a dumb meter. What I mean by that is that we go and we read your meter every month. And that's a real big limitation. If you have dumb meters, you can't put in interesting pricing plans. You don't have as much information about how the customers use energy, so you can't market to them things that they may find value added or give them information. You don't necessarily know if they've lost service or whether they've been restored. But if you have a smart meter, the meter tells you, hey, there's no service at that customer's house before the customer even calls. You can call the customer and say, hey, you've lost service at your house. We're going to be out shortly. So we put in a program to replace all the meters on Long Island over 5 years. We are dealing with modernizing the customer experience with new software and things like you would see if you go and you use Uber or Lyft. You know, there's a lot of information. They tell you when the car is going to pick you up. It needs to get to the same place. So we're doing those things for the next 5 years. Moving on to the next page. You know, one thing that's really cool that we're doing, and we have in our budget this year, is we've partnered with the state of New York on a new energy center at Jones Beach. They were going to build a new nature center. We were going to build an energy center at a different location. We teamed up with them to do both. It's going to be an excellent, not only good for school kids to come in, but also actually excellent for us to run training sessions on how people can use energy more efficiently, what we're doing. So it's going to be really cool. You're going to see that in a couple of years. And when you're at Jones Beach with young kids like mine, you might see me there on the weekends, but it'll give you something to do when it's just too hot. New electric rate pricing plans. If you've got smarter meters, you can come up with interesting things. What I mean by that is, for example, let's say you go out and you buy an electric car and you charge it overnight. We'll give you a discount for charging overnight rather than during the middle of the day. Makes sense? Good for everybody. Moving on to the next one. One of the things we're focused on, so that's customer service and satisfaction, we're focused on clean energy. New York State has really aggressive clean energy goals. That includes getting to 50% renewable energy by 2030, a new storage mandate, a new offshore wind mandate to get to 2,400 megawatts of offshore wind. And so we're going to do our part. And by our part, the state has basically outlined the goals every utility needs to hit through 2030. And that's this line here. And these are the resources we've lined up. So as you can see, we're basically already compliant through 2023, which nobody else is. I mean, we're way ahead of the game, and we'll have to continue to do things. But we've done some very interesting things. We'll talk about the South Fork Wind Farm, Clint's here. We have the 3 largest utility-scale solar farms in New York State. They're all on Long Island. New York's largest utility-scale battery system is now in place. That's on Long Island. We've done more fuel cells in load pockets than anybody else. And our energy efficiency programs lead the state as well, so helping customers use less energy. So all these are important initiatives, and I'm proud to say that of the 7 major utilities in New York, we're really leading all 7 of them. moving on. A couple of things that we're going to do this year. So EVs, you know, it's very electric vehicles. It's a very interesting thing. They've kind of hit their stride. So whether it's plug-in hybrids or it's these batteries, whether it's the Tesla or whatever, you know, battery technology is getting to the point where an EV is a feasible solution. It's very good for carbon because 40% of the state's carbon emissions are actually related to transportation. You can drastically reduce that using EVs. An EV generally has the equivalence of about 100 miles per gallon, even with all the upstate emissions, even though they're buying power from us and we're not using all renewables and everything else. So we're offering new residential charger rebates in the coming year. We're doing a smart charging discount if you charge overnight. We're going to be installing fast charging stations. So just an idea of new things we're continuing to roll out with our partners at PSEG Long Island. So next page. Finally, we're focused on reliability. Because number one thing actually I find customers want from us is they just don't want to think of things. You know, if we're perfectly forgettable, our customers are the most happy, meaning you get your bill every month, you understand the bill, you don't have any problem with it, and you have reliable power. And so this chart was not, it's an eye test, you're not meant to read it. It is an indication of how many minutes per year a customer is without power, and all you really need to know is we're here. And this is what our board has said is our standard. We're supposed to be in the top 25% of utilities. All these other utilities, these are all the New York utilities, these are all the large utilities in the country that have more than 1 million customers that are about size like us, and they're all the regional utilities. So you could slice and dice this way any way you want, but you keep coming up with the same result, which is we're providing really, you know, pretty reliable power. But what we noticed too was while we're providing pretty reliable power, if you flip to the next page, we have customers in particular pockets that, for reasons very local, don't have reliable power. This might be, you know, I was dealing with one of these just yesterday actually, and it was 90 customers. Now we have 1,000,001 customers, but this group of 90 customers in one particular village has lost power 4 times in the last year, and they've had 11 momentary outages, meaning, you know, the lights flicker. And that's a really poor level of service. So even if our average customer has great service and we have customers that have a lot of perfect power, if there's a small group of customers that don't have good power, you have to actually target programs and do something about it. And so the board put in a new standard, and so here we were just 2 years ago. About 75,000 were our customers, that's about 7% of our customers, had service that we would describe as unacceptably poor. In the last 2 years with PSEG Long Island, prioritizing funds and doing certain things, we cut that to about 45,000. Now, that isn't where we're going to end. We want to cut that to probably around 10,000, but that would be a good standard. So we're prioritizing those folks who are worse than average. Meanwhile, there's a lot of really major projects going on because things like Nassau Hub, and you've heard about it. Well, when you think about Nassau Hub, that's a big development. There's a lot of electrical infrastructure. Belmont, there's a new Nassau County Police Academy coming in. There's a whole bunch of really large projects in addition to all the normal day-to-day reliability that are coming in that we're funding as well. And by the way, this guy, doesn't he look so happy? That's what it means to work at PSEG Long Island. Look how happy this guy was, folks, huh? Flip to the next page. You know, anybody who rides the railroad, one thing PSEG did within the last year is they went out and they noticed that, you know, you can have, we have lots of poles and wires along the railroad. And one of the things that you find is if one of those poles or wires comes down, it delays service, right? It delays service on the railroad. So we went and looked at all the poles and wires that are along the railroad and are doing a remediation program to minimize the potential for disruption. It wasn't they were in bad state of repair, but it had to get even better. So we're going to be replacing 250 older transmission poles so that when you're stuck in Penn Station, like I sometimes am, and there's a delay, at least it won't be because of a pole or wire that is down, causing it. I've been on that situation. So here's basically what we're focused on. I mean, this is, you know, you may remember from sociology, Maslow's hierarchy of need, right? So this is Maslow's hierarchy of need for electric utilities. And so there's the bread and butter utility that just provides the basic service. There's a successful utility where they're benchmarking their service qualities. They're doing good continuous improvement processes. They've got good energy efficiency and clean energy programs. They're doing innovative things with rate and payment options and getting involved in the community, things like Jones Beach. So this is where we are, you know. So this is where we were 5 years ago. This is where we are today. But we're also making all the investments necessary to get to where we'll be a leader in 5 years. So we're not done. Going back to that first slide, we're in the pack. We're doing much better than we've ever done in the past, but there's still room to go. And so one final thought for you, and well, two thoughts. Number one, if you want to read all more about what we have planned, our budget's out and it describes it, and you can see it on our website. The last thought is just offshore wind, which I'm going to key up for, and not spend a ton of time talking about, but key up, which is just, obviously, if you're thinking about the future of the Long Island grid, there's just all this energy right here. And New York has an aggressive goal, 1,600 megawatts of renewable energy. Massachusetts has a goal, or New York's is 2,400, Massachusetts is 1,600. New Jersey has a 3,500 megawatt goal. Connecticut and Rhode Island have goals. Maryland has a goal. And we've been able to identify certain lease sites that are already available for development, including the Orsted lease sites. And then there's other lease sites that are still being researched. But just look at where we are. You know, we're jutted out into the ocean. You know, that's a very interesting place to be. That's where the energy is. So this is obviously going to be a very key part of meeting New York's goals for clean energy. And also, we're going to be a key partner in it. We're spending an awful lot of time researching that topic on how do you integrate this into the grid in the most efficient way. And I'll leave the rest of it. And so that, I'll turn it over to our next speaker.
Morning, everybody. Let's try that one more time. I'm in the energy business. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. All right, we got to be a little louder than next door, right? I'm going to go about 10 minutes so I can leave some time for my colleagues. So, Bella, if you'd set your stopwatch for me. My name tag says PSE&G, but I actually work for National Grid. I have 30 years in the business, and I'm open to negotiation after next year when I'm fireproof. So if you guys want to work out a deal, I'll talk to you. So guys, just a high-level overview of National Grid and our business. We are one of the biggest invested-owned companies in the world in the utility business. 7 million gas and electric customers with 22,000 employees. We're based out of the UK, but I'm going to really focus on the New York business. If you can go to the next slide, please. In our New York business is 60% of all of our business. So we have business in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, UK, upstate, Syracuse, Buffalo, Albany, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and Long Island. But as you can see, everything highlighted in blue here, that's 60% of where we make our money. We got 4 million gas customers, 4 million gas and electric, with 8,000 employees. Focus downstate, because that's where we are, right? We have 8,000 employees. 4,000 employees downstate, 1.8 million gas customers between New York City and Long Island, and that number continues to grow. Just to give you an idea, on a cold day in the wintertime, we put almost 2 billion cubic feet of gas through the system, just to give you an idea how much gas we move along. And that feeds our power generators, our power gens, and about 30 plus power plants as well. We have 12,000 miles of gas transmission pipeline, and about 1.4 square miles of service area. This is the most important screen right here that I'm going to talk about. This is our New York facility system. We're physically connected with Con Edison, Brooklyn, and Long Island, and those are the pipelines. We get fed from Iroquois, down from Canada, and then from Texas. It comes all the way up, and we're all into, everything you see in red is a 350-pound transmission system that we're physically connected to. So, you know, Brooklyn, Long Island, and Con Edison, we're physically all connected together, and we feed each other through transfer metering stations. I wanted to talk really quick about the investment. We've invested $3 billion in our rate case over the last 3 years. So it's $1 billion a year rebuilding the infrastructure. And some of these projects I want to just touch on quick. This pipe here that you see here, this comes in from Transco, and it comes into Brooklyn. There's a proposal called Nessie that you'll hear about to run another pipe and connect into this pipe and bring another 400 million decatherms into the system a day. Right now we're dealing with our environmental agencies over the next 6 months, and we'll be proposing to the governor, and hopefully we can move forward with this, and I'll get into why later. Other thing we're doing is the MRI project and Northwest Nassau. These are two other major transmission projects that rebuild the system for the next 100 years and position us well. Other things that we're doing, state-of-the-art control center. We merged 4 control centers into one, and now it is now in Melville. And in our LNG facilities, we have 2 tanks in Greenport, Brooklyn, and we have a tank out in Holtzville. Those are our reserve systems. So when all the pipeline gas is expended, we go, the LNG is used on the coldest days of the year of the winter, so that's like our reserves. So we have some upgrades that we're doing there. We'll also replacing 585 miles of pipe as part of our main replacement, and then EE is one of our biggest thrusts, and then storm hardening. After Sandy, we're actually putting an integrated system in that if, God forbid, another storm comes in or a hurricane, we'll be able to shut people's services off for the click of a mouse, instead of sending people in the field where they could actually be harmed or actually be overwhelmed. Now it's all going to be done remotely. So these are the type of investments that we're making. Responding to our customers. Every year we convert about 8,000 customers a year on average downstate. So the demand for gas is there. It's constant. And I'll tell you, it just doesn't stop. We just put a station in Brooklyn Navy Yard. We have 200 commercial customers online waiting for gas. So it's a good story. It's a good time to be in the business. It actually equates to taking 500,000 cars off the road a year by these conversions and getting off number 6 oil in the city. We also opened up a consumer advocacy center in Brentwood. This is where some of our low-income customers can come in. It's a very private atmosphere. You come in, you sit down, and you prove that you make a certain amount of salary or you need help. We'll give you help with your energy bills. And if you qualify, we'll also give you $7,500 to convert to natural gas. So this is a really cool thing. We opened that a few months ago. And then working on our EE programs, and we also just put a new sustainability center in Metro Tech, where it's in Brooklyn. You can walk in, and it's all customer focused and interactive as you're on your way to pay your bill. And then we have people there to help you with any questions you may have. This is big too. Economic development and energy efficiency. Since 2009, we've spent over $100 million on energy efficiency. So we're working with the 80 by 50 policies, and we've invested a lot of money into clean green energy. This is a really good story, and you're going to see those numbers go up. The 100 million is just the beginning. And then with our economic development, we've awarded $1.4 million last year. This year hasn't been calculated yet, but it will beat the previous year. And this revitalizes communities and really gets things started. So we're committed partners with our communities. This talent pipeline. So National Grid, and I don't know, I can't speak for the other companies, but we did some statistics. 70% of the company will be millennial age grade within 6 years from now. 70% of our workforce will be run by the millennial workforce. So we're really committed to hiring new people. As part of the rate case, we hired 380 people downstate off this rate case, and these pipeline STEM projects are really important. We have a great partnership with Farmingdale, where we have a gas academy, and if the men and women complete this academy, they're actually guaranteed a job at the other end of it. Girls Inc., Kathy's here, she's very active with Girls Inc. We bring girls in, we show them women in non-traditional roles, kind of spark their interest in getting into STEM and engineering pipelines. And then some of the other ones, Energy Tech in the city, we have a partnership with Con Edison, and of course SUNY. We continually bring in students from SUNY, and we spend 2 or 3 days, we take them around to all our power plants, LNG plants, control centers, different areas of the company, to just give them an idea of careers in energy, and we really focus on STEM and engineering. And I just wanted to mention really quick while I'm on this slide, everybody knows it's been a little bit over a year since Hurricane Maria. There was a manager on my team, Juan Santiago, who actually went down with the electric crews, and he was a translator while they were restoring electric. He came back and he said, you know what? These people really need help. And our president, our president is John Bruckner, but at that time it was Ken Daly. The two of them got together and said, we're not done. So we went back to Puerto Rico, and we brought 25 kids up and put them to our engineering pipeline program, but it didn't stop there. We also went back again, and we gave them money for computers, robotics labs, and had a ribbon cutting just last month. So wouldn't that be cool if like 10 or 15 of these kids actually came and wound up becoming engineers for the company? So I just wanted to touch on that quick. Pathway to the 80 by 50 challenge. I know everybody in here is probably interested about this the most. We've just invested 500 a lot of money. We invested a lot of money with Con Edison, and the reason why we did this is because we're committed to this 80 by 50 path, and how do we get there? And you can see, you know, some of the cost-efficient energy investments, being strategic, gas safety and compliance, electric vehicles. I think Tom mentioned electric vehicles. Right now at National Grid, if you buy an electric vehicle, we give you a $5,000 check. Any employee who buys an electric vehicle gets a $5,000 check once they show the receipt of their car. In the UK, in our UK business, 2018 was the greenest year on record in Great Britain. 50% of all power in the UK was delivered by a low carbon source. This is something that we're really proud of, and this is something we're trying to emulate. You know, Europe is way ahead of us in this space, but I think if we're committed to the policy and we're committed to working with all the city and state agencies, we're going to get there. Solar. Here's something that, you know, 30 years in the gas business, I would never think I would say this. We converted more solar panels, more solar customers last year than we did gas. So that was, I said there was 8,000 gas customers. We actually converted more solar panels, and we invested $100 million with a company called Sunrun, and we're doing a big pilot program in Staten Island, and that will be rolled across the footprint. We also have a 23 megawatt solar farm out in Calverton, and then the Deepwater Wind Block Island project, we were also involved in that, but I'll let Clint talk about that. And then electric vehicles, like I said, we have 165 charging stations, battery storage projects on the in East Hampton and Montauk, and then the biogas. If anybody's familiar with Newtown Creek, if you drive over the BQE, you can see it off to the right, those two big egg-looking tanks. We're actually going to take waste, human waste, and convert it back into natural gas and put it out to our transmission system. That's a big deal. That's going to supply over 5,000 residential customers using renewable gas. Another part of the investment with the infrastructure. And then some of the REV initiatives that we're working on. Everybody who's familiar with REV, Reforming the Energy Vision. These are some of the big projects that we're doing throughout the states. Up in Buffalo, we went into a low-income area and we put solar panels in housing projects, in churches, in synagogues, in commercial space, and really made a big impact. And then in some of these, just more locally, we did a geothermal project out in Riverhead. We had a 55 and older community, and we went out there and we put this geothermal project in, and it went off really well. And we're not doing enough there. I think there's more opportunity for geothermal in the future. Really exciting stuff. And then the demand response stuff. What that does is when if say you have a laundromat and you want to come off during those load periods, we actually give rebates. So that's helped us out on the system. And then the micro CHP stuff is more in the city. And that is my story. Did I make 10 minutes? I did. Do I have time left? Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you for your time, everybody.
All right, I think we just turned to afternoon. I was going to say good morning, and it's 12:01. So good afternoon, everyone. I also have 10 minutes, so Walter, if you want to just keep an eye on the clock and give me a nod. But I also only have 10 slides, so I ought to be able to cover 10 slides in 10 minutes. So as Tom Falcone said, PSEG Long Island is the operator of the electric grid and customer service. We perform all the day-to-day functions of the electric utility on Long Island. And we take strategic direction from LIPA in the state of New York. We have a long-term contract with the Long Island Power Authority, and we're trying to do all the same things that Tom mentioned: improve customer satisfaction, improve reliability, keep costs reasonable, better storm response, energy efficiency, renewables, and green programs, which is primarily what I'm going to talk about today. So, REV, Reforming Energy Vision, is a strategy to build a clean, resilient, and affordable energy system. And back in 2015, the state put together these three goals, the second set of bullets: 40% reduction in greenhouse gases. All this is by 2030, by the year 2030, which is now only about 12 years away. So 40% reduction in greenhouse gases, 50% of all energy, all electric energy will be renewable and 600 trillion BTUs of building energy efficiency. That number is not just electricity, that's natural gas, oil, coal, everything in terms of BTUs. If you look at just the electric portion of that, I believe the number is 185 trillion BTUs, which it's hard to get a sense of what that means anyway. But our priorities, we want to offer energy efficiency programs to all of our customers, achieve the renewable energy target, which is the 50% by year 2030. We have demand load management tariffs. As an electric utility, we tend to peak at about 5 o'clock on a hot summer afternoon. And all the costs of our business, or the majority of the costs of infrastructure, substations, power plants, transmission lines, are driven by that one peak day, actually the peak hour at 5 o'clock on a hot summer afternoon. So what demand response tariffs do is, on that hottest summer afternoon, we can have some of our customers change the set point on the air conditioners, maybe they can discharge battery storage, or if it's a manufacturing company, they may be able to change some of their processes. So we want to have demand load management tariffs, and then we are beginning to deploy interconnecting of energy storage. We had heard from National Grid about the ones out in the East Hampton, Montauk. Those are some very large utility scale battery storage, and I'll talk about it a little bit later in our Utility 2.0 plan. We have plans to drive battery storage down to individual residential homes as well. Other objectives of REV, non-wire solutions. As Tom mentioned, there's some areas of Long Island, even though overall our electric usage has been pretty flat, there's areas with robust growth because of new business and new opportunity. And if the grid is constrained in some of those areas, we're looking at alternatives to the traditional construction of a new substation or a new transmission line. We're looking at using energy efficiency, demand response, and battery storage, and renewable energy, and combined heat and power, anything we can find to reduce the demand on those peak days in those load pockets. So we have what we call non-wire solutions, and then we want to have state funding to achieve the goal of New York Sun, which is 3,000 megawatts over the next 10 years, and then there'll be state funding for community microgrid development. So, clean energy experience. Thus far, we've had $220 million of customer incentives on Long Island, over 43,000 solar customers in New York State. All of New York State, we have about 1/3 of the total solar in the entire state on Long Island. Even though we're only 15% of the population, we have about double that amount of solar. So we lead the state in solar PV, and someone else mentioned earlier, there's about 336 megawatts overall of solar connected. And this is behind the meter on top of primarily homes. There's also another couple hundred megawatts of large utility scale solar. And in terms of energy efficiency, we've invested, since PSCG Long Island took over about 5 years ago, over $300 million in energy efficiency investments, and we're saving approximately 1.5% of our electric sales every year. So had we not had the energy efficiency programs, our electric utility or customer consumption would be growing by a little over 1% a year. Instead, it's going down by 1/4% or 0.5% because of the efficiency change. So offshore wind, we're going to hear a lot more from Clint at Deepwater, but we did enter into in this case it was Light Blonde Power Authority, but we helped negotiate and work all the terms and conditions of that contract. 130 megawatts. We expect that to be completed by 2022. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we deployed through the National Grid and a contract, long-term contract out in East Hampton and Montauk, the largest and first utility-scale battery project in New York. So this just shows you the tremendous growth. This is the year 2000, for those that can't see you in the back. And then this is 2014, the year that PSCG Long Island took over the operation of the grid on Long Island. And there was some growth in solar every year. It started to peak around 2011, 2012, as the cost of solar panels came down. And all of the contractors on Long Island, there are numerous reputable solar contractors. It became more popular, but it was still very expensive. So in 2013, on a cumulative basis, there were about 6,000, maybe 7,000 homes with solar panels on the roof. And between 2014 and 2018, we grew from 7,000 to 43,000. And we're continuing to grow at about 5 to 7,000 new homes per year. Homes and businesses, but the vast majority are homes. So about 7,000 new solar installation customers are being added every year on Long Island. With regard to the clean energy standard targets, the clean energy standard is 50% renewable by 2030. some of the prior rooftop solar and utility scale solar, the way the legislation and the regulations are written right now, the rooftop solar doesn't count toward the clean energy standard. Indirectly it does because it reduces consumption. And if you want to get 50% renewable and you have less consumption from customers, it's a lower threshold. So indirectly the rooftop solar helps, but it doesn't directly count in the current environment. And the same with the utility scale solar that was installed prior to 2012, I think it was. That 50 megawatts doesn't count toward the clean energy standard because it was in the baseline. But anything incremental, all these on the right, we have proposed or contracted several hundred additional megawatts. This 130 is the Deepwater Wind project that you're going to hear about. And we have feed-in tariffs, which is a long-term power purchase agreement between the Power Authority and the developer of the renewable project, mostly solar. It also includes some fuel cells. And then the South Fork, I mentioned, renewable RFP. Most of that is solar, some of it is fuel cells, and some of it is wind. Next slide. So Utility 2.0, basically the terminology, when we entered into a contract with the Power Authority, long-term contract, there was a language put in there that we would offer Utility 2.0 programs. That was basically the predecessor to the Reforming Energy Vision. And the idea of Utility 2.0, as Tom said, the Maslow hierarchy, we want to be not just a great utility, but an outstanding utility serving customers with all sorts of innovative products and services. So we're moving from empowering customers with advanced meters, which is our first step along a road, to an outstanding utility. We feel we're doing a good job now, but we're moving to that newer, more customer-centric utility. We're exploring all these innovative technologies like advanced battery storage, behind-the-meter storage, electric vehicles that you heard about, and then ultimately we're going to move to the distributed system platform, which is basically a concept where instead of having all the generators serving customers with one-way flow of power, when you have a distributed platform, all of the various market participants, whether they be customers with solar or fuel cells or combined heat and power, it's a two-way flow of electricity from businesses and developers of generators into the system, along with the major generators that we have. Just a couple more slides. Slide 8. This just shows you what we think the future homes are going to look like. You'll have an electric vehicle in your garage, smart appliances that can communicate with your smartphone, control usage, time of use pricing, variable pricing, so you'll save costs basically by using things off-peak at nighttime and early morning hours. Hot tub, solar on the roof, electric vehicle in the garage, battery storage, which will give you resiliency during storms. So just a pictorial view of what we think. Two-way flow of energy. The old way was one way, new way will have two-way flow of energy. I'm not going to go into all these details. We have smart meter deployment. Smart meters basically give us new capabilities, as Tom already covered. If the power's out, we'll know it right away. So that's a big benefit. And then also as a consumer, if any of you have a smart meter in your home right now, I know I have one, I can go on and I can see last night and yesterday, every 15 minutes I can see how much energy I used. And it gives you understanding of how and when you're using energy. And by doing that, it helps you save energy and control the time that you use the energy. Next slide. And then lastly, support of distributed energy resources. Super Savers is in North Belmore right now. We're basically using all of our tools that we have available to us to help customers save energy, and we're putting a focused effort in the North Belmore area, because if we don't do that, there would be a need to upgrade our substation. So we're attempting this non-wire solution right now, and we call it Super Savers. So if you happen to live in North Belmore, you're probably getting a lot of communication from PSCG Long Island about that program. Expansion of electric vehicles, incentives for charging, off-peak pricing for electric charging. We're going to begin deploying a program that will give you incentives to put battery storage in your home, particularly if you have solar on the roof, you may want to consider that. And then we're going to do some additional utility scale storage. All right, thank you very much. We'll take questions after 10.
Thanks, Mike. And thanks everybody for coming out today. My name's Clint Plummer. I'm in the offshore wind business. And how's that?
Yeah.
Excellent. My name's Clint Plummer and I'm in the offshore wind business. And I'm very happy to be with you today. When Eric asked me to speak on this panel today, and he told me that LIPA and National Grid and PSEG were all going to be here, I said, Eric, I don't know if there's anything that I can add to a panel that has all of these experts on it. And Eric agreed. And he said he wanted me to talk about something different, which was the perspective from a renewable energy and particularly an offshore wind developer. So I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes with you, and I'm going to tell you about why we think the offshore wind business is important and makes sense. I'm going to tell you who we are, and then I'm going to tell you how we're bringing that to reality here in Long Island with a project you've heard a little bit about that we're very proud of called the South Fork Wind Farm. So just by background, I am with a company called Ørsted US Offshore Wind, which is the result of a recent merger between Deepwater Wind, which had been about a decade-old developer of offshore wind here in the US, a real pioneer, a company that I'm very proud to have been part of the founding team of, and Ørsted, which is a Danish-based company that is the world's largest offshore wind developer. And we're very proud of putting together those two companies because we bring really first-in-class capabilities here in the U.S. of being on the ground and developing some projects that we're very proud of. But also Ørsted's world-leading capabilities in developing and constructing offshore wind. I note that this is one of our company's projects in the European North Sea. 25% of all the offshore wind in the entire world has been built by our company. And on top of that, I note that just this summer we installed our 1,000th offshore wind turbine. So it's a very large scale. The company is about 5,600 people and about a $27 billion market capitalization. So we've got a big balance sheet, and we're very excited about what that means we can do here in the U.S. and particularly in Long Island. So if we can just go to the first slide, I want to talk about why offshore wind makes sense. And we have to start with where we are and where we live. And that's here in the U.S. Northeast. In the area between Boston and Washington, D.C., we have about 20% of the U.S.'s entire population living on about 5% of its landmass. So we've got a very dense population where it's difficult and it's expensive to build anything at all, especially power generation or new transmission. And so as a result of that, and particularly some of the things that Tom spoke about with the age of the electric generating fleet in the U.S. Northeast, we know that there's a fundamental need for new sources of power generation over the next 10 to 15 years. I note that that's independent of any kind of policy for renewable energy or clean air, all of which are good things, but at its core, over the next decade or two, we as a society are going to have to build new power plants to accommodate growing consumption and retirements of old power plants. And in the Northeast, it's more expensive than it is just about anywhere else. But in the same area, we have some resources that we don't have anywhere else. One of those is a world-class wind resource that's right off our shores. The weather nerds refer to this as the Saudi Arabia of wind because the wind is so strong and it's so consistent and because it tends to peak in production at around the same time, in the middle of the afternoon, when most folks are using their electricity. And on top of that, we also have a very shallow and soft outer continental shelf, which just means that as you go offshore, the water stays relatively flat for about 200 miles offshore, and seafloor is pretty soft. So we can drive piles into it very cost effectively. That means that we can build offshore wind very, very cost effectively. And as we look at the dynamics in the U.S. Northeast, Long Island really is, as Tom said, the tip of the spear for this. Long Island has growing electricity needs in certain pockets, like the South Fork, that we see it being ahead of other places, but similar to where other places will be as well. And so that's why we've built our business on trying to supply cost-effective, clean energy to these densely populated areas in the U.S. Northeast. If we go to the next slide, we can talk about the portfolio of projects that we've put together. This is a very busy slide, so let me just kind of unpack what's on this. The combined portfolio of the legacy Deepwater Wind and legacy Ørsted, now Ørsted US Offshore Wind, is a portfolio of projects up and down the eastern seaboard. The first of those is the Block Island Wind Farm, which we developed Deepwater Wind. It's been in operation for about 2 years now. It's performing very well. It's a small project, 5 turbines, but it was able to help Block Island completely shut down its legacy diesel generating plant, and it saved the electricity consumers on Block Island about 40% on their annual energy bills, and reduced the consumption about 40 million, about 1 million gallons of diesel fuel every year. So that project was a great example of how using offshore wind can help displace fossil fuel consumption, save people money, and provide a really valuable service. We see the same thing with our South Fork wind farm here. The South Fork of Long Island had more load growth and more difficulty in building anything else than any other part of Long Island. So we competed with 20 other proposals and were found to be the most cost-effective way for LIPA and PSEG Long Island to do 2 things. First, to be able to provide cost-effective renewable energy, and second, to be able to provide energy to a part of the system that needed it. And by putting those 2 things together, the South Fork Wind Farm resulted in being the most cost-effective solution for that part of Long Island. That's the next project that we're building. In addition to that, we're also developing a project to serve the state of Maryland called the Skipjack Wind Farm, a small project off the coast of Virginia, and a second project for Rhode Island that's called Revolution Wind. We're very proud of this portfolio. We've got the capacity here in the U.S. to build something in the range of 8,000 to 10,000 megawatts just with the leases that we hold. And we've got a lot of time and demand to go out and build what we think is a really great set of projects that can help communities. If you go to the next slide, we're very proud of the South Fork Wind Farm in particular because of what it embodies. This is a project that is cost-effective clean energy for a place that needs new sources of energy. But in addition to that, there are a couple of other elements of this project that we're very proud of. The first is that we've committed to building the onshore portions of this project using local union labor under an agreement that was established with the Long Island Building and Construction Trades Council. In addition to that, we've committed to basing our operations and maintenance facility in the town of East Hampton, and we'll have permanent jobs there. They'll be ferrying crews out to do the operations and maintenance work on that project over its full 25-year useful life. And we're very close to finalizing a first-of-its-kind community benefits agreement in which we worked very closely with the municipal government in the town of East Hampton to develop the onshore portions of that project in a way that makes it work best for that community by committing to local hiring practices, certain investments in local infrastructure, and a human face to the project that we think is very helpful and unique in the energy industry. So with that, I just want to say thanks again so much for your time. If you go to the next slide, my email address is here. I'm happy to take any questions, and if folks have follow-up, don't hesitate to email. Thank you.
Thank you for your attention. I know it's been a little challenging. We've been hearing a little bit on the other side too, but we have a few minutes for questions, so we'll start with.
So as a basic thing, I recall some years ago, they would always say that Long Island's economic development was stunted because we had the highest cost of utility in the planet, or whatever. So can you, has that ever been true? Is that true? And where are we in that sense?
Sure, I'll take that one. So, if you go back 20 years ago, right to the time when Shoreham was in, we did have the highest cost of electricity rates. It wasn't in the U.S. That said, it wasn't that much significantly higher than the Northeast region. Because the other fact that's important is the Northeast has significantly higher electric rates for a whole variety of reasons that we could get into than other parts of the country. And so where we are right now is about middle of the pack for our region. And by that I mean if you live in New York, or if you have a job, say in New York City, where you're going to live on Long Island, Westchester, New Jersey, maybe Connecticut. So that would be what I call our metro area. So we're about middle of the pack for the metro area. Are we doing things that will help us get, and our goal, and the LIPA's board's goal is get to the bottom of the pack for our region, and that's a good goal, and that's an achievable goal. Will we ever get to the place where we're the bottom of the pack in the country? No. I mean, if you live in Oklahoma and you go out with your shovel and, anywhere you dig, you spring into a natural gas well, you have cheaper cost electricity than you're ever going to have in Long Island for a whole variety of reasons.
Yeah, I've solar power in my home for about 3 years, and on that app that I have with that company, I can see pretty much daily, weekly, monthly, how much, not only am I generating, what I find more interesting is what I'm using in the house. So I guess the question is to Mike, on the new smart meters, are residents able to access that and see usage?
Yes.
Because I think it's a mindfulness tool
Yeah,
to help us, limit.
Yeah, you are. So right now, we have about 100,000 out of our 1.1 million customers that have these AMI smart meters. I have one in my own home, and yes, you can see it's a 24-hour lag. So if I went on right now on my app, I would see yesterday's usage to around midnight, but you can see it every 15 minutes. And in the case of your house, if you have solar, you'll see the net amount of consumption or production because you have a net meter. Whereas other homeowners that don't have solar would always see the consumption. But yes, you can see it every 15 minutes. You just have to go to My Account. If anyone pays their bill online or wants to see, it's called My Account. And you sit and put a password in there, and it's very simple. You go to My Account, you look at your bill, and it says access your usage, and you click on the word access, and it gives you every 15 minutes as far back as you want to see.
Good morning. So at the solar workshop before this, one of the questions raised by the solar industry was where we're at with changing rates. So you introduced the AMI. That gives the technological capability to do some time of day pricing and things like that. Can you just put into context whether that change is coming and how that fits into the concerns that the industry has about how beta is playing out?
So I can take it, Mike can also chime in. So it is coming. The board approved the first a time of use pilot in July, and that will begin to be marketed in January 2019. And then also PSEG filed a Utility 2.0 filing in June that lays out a timeline to revise Long Island's rate structure from about 2020 to about 2023. One of the biggest things that we are doing, though, is investing in the enabling technology to do that in a way that actually will help customers and customers will understand the bill. So it's not enough to just pass the rate. You have to give the customer the tool to understand their usage and actually be able to take advantage of that. And so that's what the emphasis is, and that's where the IT systems and the planning is going right now. So that when we roll it out, people actually use it. Just put it in perspective, 98% of our customers use standard rates. That's not that atypical for the utility industry, but the few utilities that really lean on this, I think, say Salt River Project, which serves Phoenix, Arizona, about 2/3 of their customers voluntarily have chosen other rates that work for them. So there's clearly a path that if you do this right, customers can figure out things that make sense for them, and that's what our goal is, to allow customers to figure out the things that make sense for them and their lifestyle. If you have an EV, you may want to charge overnight. If you have a pool pump, you may want to run the pool pump at night. There's a whole variety of things you can do, but it's if you just offer the rate, it really isn't enough. That isn't how you get customers to sign up for this stuff. You really have to offer the education and the tools that go along with it.
I don't know if I want to call it David.
David Sheridan, Power Solar. Thank you so much, everyone. So question on, maybe we could break down the math. 50% goal of renewable energy by 2030. How do you apply that to Long Island? What percentage of renewable energy is right now as part of the energy mix on Long Island? And what is the goal by 2030? Can you break down for this region?
So the presentation had what our share is. So it's a statewide goal. It's not 50% of every electric utility individually measured. It's 50% of the state as a whole, because the state has different energy mix. So let's say you're up in Buffalo, you benefit from tons of hydro. And so it wouldn't really be appropriate for Long Island, if you're in Buffalo and you can buy hydro at 3 cents a kilowatt hour, well, they're done, they don't have to do anything. And Long Island, you've got to, because they're already there, you've got to do everything. So it's a statewide goal, and it's applied by the state as a whole. And so what they've done is lay out targets for every utility to add to the increment, starting with where the base is, and the base is around 20–25%, depending on what you measure, and to get it to 50% by 2030 and more beyond that. So basically, LIPA has its goal, and we've been lining up our goals. So we're good through about 2023 with what we already have under contract. And then from 2023 to 2030, we're gonna have to do a lot more, but that's how you do things. I mean, you have to kind of layer in these goals over time. You have to figure out what the best projects are over time. You're really reinventing the electric grid. And so you're gonna do it piece by piece in a way that makes sense.
I think the view has become, I think we're 5%, that's what the annual report says, we're 5%. I think our question for leadership, are we going fast enough? Shouldn't we go much faster?
Well, I think the practical reality is that it isn't easy to recreate an electric grid. And so I think we're doing faster than anybody else. And you can do it sloppy, but if you want to do it well, you know, it's not that easy. So give you an example, even on, say, the South Fork. In order to figure out the South Fork, it took about a year to figure out how to integrate it properly and how to make it cost effective. And then we went back in our November board meeting, and turbine technology had increased, and we did another study, and we said, oh, we could use the larger turbines. Wouldn't that be great? But there was a limitation. It was about 130 megawatts was the limitation of what that substation would take in that part of the grid. So to do it well really takes a lot of work. It's not so easy. And I always walk in and I say to the engineers, you know, hey, can't we go any faster? Can't you just kind of skip over all these steps? Turns out you can't. It turns out that it isn't that easy. And so I think the pedal's to the metal. We're going to hit the 2030 goal. At least we will. But it isn't that easy. There's a lot of things that are happening. And I look and say on the flip side, one of the biggest things that's happening is that, you know, take offshore wind, where basically in the U.S. right now there's not that much going. There's one project, 30 megawatts. It's great. Clint led that project. But over the last few years, okay, New York has adopted a 2,400 megawatt goal. Just in the last 3 years, New York's adopted a 2,400 megawatt goal. Massachusetts adopted a 1,600 megawatt goal. Rhode Island and Connecticut signed projects. Maryland signed projects. So we went from basically nothing to where we can see between about 2025 and 2030, we're going to be putting in about 1,000 megawatts a year of this stuff. You just add up all the commitments. And obviously that develops an industry, it brings down costs, it brings expertise. So that's how, you know, you need to get some things going. And I think when it's a compounding effect. Compound interest is the magic, you know, wonder of the world, and it's the same here. You have to get certain things started as a prerequisite to move other things. And so we're doing the right things to get, you know, for example, that industry started where, you know, a few years ago we were nowhere. And that's going to enable a lot of interesting things, but you got to get going.
I think we have time for one more. I have to go to my trustee, Peter Gollman.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to ask National Grid and also PSEG, what are you doing to ensure the most efficient new construction with the most renewable energy built into it as is feasible? Because because it's easy to do things right when you've got nothing. It's harder to do things right when you've got something you've got to retrofit. When we go to lunch, there will be awards to new construction. I guarantee you, at least half of those will have not one single solar panel on them. And they shouldn't even be in the running if they don't have solar.
So, a great question. What I will tell you is, in my role, I spend a lot of time with the developers. And over the last 2 months, I've met with the developers for the Belmont Hub and also TriTech, which is the project out in Ronkonkoma. And to answer that question, we brought in our engineering team to look at all the REV opportunities, to look at the demand response, micro CHP, geothermal, and it's all being negotiated right now because you are correct. We are not doing enough. And if we really want to get to that green energy future, you know, we have to be committed to our customers. We have to build our infrastructure because, you know, people want energy now, but we got to head towards that green future. So these discussions that you speak of, when we meet with the developers, we have a team of people that we bring in. One of them is an expert in energy efficiency. One of them is an expert on REV. One of them is an expert on geothermal. And we tell the developers, these are the services that we provide. We're not just looking to sell you gas. If you want to go green, we'll help you get there because we realize that we're way behind the UK and the rest of Europe. And we know we have to lead down that green path. That's where we're headed.
Yeah. Just to add to that, so in commercial businesses, it's very similar. We have major account executives. Whenever there's a big development like the Belmont project, we work with the developers. We talked about combined heat and power, fuel cells, solar, all the various energy efficiency technologies. So in the commercial buildings, we're generally deeply involved in discussions. With regard to residential homes, we don't talk to every homeowner, every builder that's building, but we do talk to code officials, and ultimately where you're going is the code may needs to require some of those things. But while it's not required, we also have very high, generous rebates for geothermal heating and cooling, because that's really one of the most efficient ways to heat and cool your home. And once you put in the gas boiler or the other technology, oil heating, it's probably there for 20 years. So the time to put in the geothermal, drill the wells and put in the geothermal heating and cooling is during new construction. So we do have generous incentives for geothermal, and with the incentives, it isn't really that much more to put geo in than to put a gas boiler and a separate central air conditioning system.
Okay, with that, I'd like to thank the panel. I'd like to thank everybody who joined us today.